Imagine a candle that never burns out, a flame so old it has seen centuries pass, but its shadow moves on its own. It watches, it learns, it mimics, and sometimes it chooses. One night, Mira entered an abandoned monastery, curious about the legend of the eternal candle. What she found wasn't just shadows, it was herself, and it wanted more. Would you dare to see your own shadow move without you?
Watch closely. The candle is waiting.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Silent Scream. And if you're new here, thanks for stopping by. If you love stories that make your skin crawl and your mind race, you're in the right place. Today, we're diving into the chilling tale of the Candle Shadow, a story of a monastery, a mysterious flame, and shadows that move on their own. So get comfortable, turn off the lights if you dare, and stay with us until the end, because this is one story that'll haunt you long after the candle flickers out. The candle flickered, though no draft stirred the stagnant air of the monastery. Its wax was ancient, yellowed, curled like a dying leaf, but the flame burned bright, eternal, as though mocking time itself. Mira had never seen anything like it. She stepped closer, drawn by a strange pull, the scent of melted wax and something older, something that smelled faintly of iron and decay, filling her nostrils. Then she saw it. The shadow cast on the cold stone wall moved on its own, not with the sway of the flame, not in rhythm with her movements. It stretched, contracted, danced, and sometimes it mimicked her, but with subtle differences. Her shadow grinned before she did. It raised a hand. She hadn't moved. It blinked where her eyes were wide open. Mira stumbled back, heart hammering. Every instinct screamed to leave, but curiosity rooted her in place. The monastery was silent, yet the shadows whispered. A voice, soft and wrong, slithered through the hall. "You've come to see yourself." And Mira realized this candle didn't just cast light. It revealed life, and it could twist it.
You've come to see yourself.
Mira's first night in the monastery was cold beyond reason. The heavy wooden door creaked shut behind her, leaving only the soft echo of her own footsteps to answer back. She had arrived seeking refuge, curiosity about the abandoned halls of the monastery having outweighed common sense. The locals had warned her, the place keeps its secrets. She had laughed it off. Now, standing in the flickering candlelight of the central hall, she wasn't so sure. The candle stood on a pedestal of cracked stone, its flame burning unnaturally steady. Shadows pooled at its base, stretching along the walls, twisting in impossible angles. Mira's eyes followed a particularly long shadow as it writhed and contorted, and then froze, forming the outline of the man sitting cross-legged on the floor. But the hall was empty. Her breathing hitched. She tried to convince herself it was a trick of the eyes, a tired mind projecting shapes. But when she moved her hand to touch the pedestal, the shadow mirrored her motion, and smiled. Mira yanked her hand back. The shadow laughed, a low, hollow sound that reverberated against the stone walls. Panic rose, but fascination anchored her. She leaned closer, trying to trace its edges. The shadow didn't simply reflect her movements anymore. It anticipated them. When she raised her foot, it raised a leg she hadn't moved yet. When she blinked, it blinked after a brief, mocking delay. And then it began to move independently. It slid across the floor toward her, its black shape oozing like liquid, but its outline remained human. Mira stumbled backward, tripping over a broken chair. The shadow stopped and crouched, tilting its head as though curious. Then it pointed. Mira followed the gesture and froze. At the far end of the hall, a door she hadn't noticed before was slowly creaking open. Something inside her told her to run. Something stronger told her to go through that door.
The passage beyond was narrow, lined with stone niches. Candles flickered along the walls, each burning with the same eternal flame, each casting shadows that didn't obey the light. One by one, the shadows stretched and shifted, twisting into forms Mira recognized. Hers, yet not hers. Faces of strangers, faces of people long dead. A cold draft whispered through the corridor, carrying voices, low murmurs that she almost understood. Her own name seemed to echo back at her from the stone. Mira. She tried to turn, to retreat, but the passage had lengthened. She was walking further than she had intended, deeper into the darkness. Each candle she passed intensified the shadow's movement. They no longer mimicked her exactly. They began to act out moments of her life. Her first day at school, the fight with her mother, the night she had been alone in the rain. Every memory appeared in dark silhouette, exaggerated and warped. The shadows began to merge, growing taller, stretching toward the ceiling. One moment she saw her reflection in the wall. Her shadow joined with the others, forming a collective shape, a dark parade of all her fears and regrets. She tried to scream, but her voice was swallowed by the stone walls. The candle at the end of the hall pulsed, flame bending unnaturally as if breathing. Mira felt herself being drawn forward, compelled by a force she couldn't resist. At the next candle, she saw movement behind her. Her own shadow had detached completely now, standing on its own, and was creeping closer to her real body. She stumbled, trying to step aside, but the floor shifted beneath her feet. Shadows poured from the walls, wrapping around her ankles, pulling her forward. The candle's flame wavered, and for a heartbeat, she saw herself, not as she was, but as she could be. Her shadow smiled, holding her future like a knife. Then the whispering came, louder, urgent. Live it or lose it. Mira screamed and ran. She fled through corridors that twisted impossibly, doors opening into the same hall, stairs descending into infinite darkness. The shadows pursued, not running, but gliding, always keeping pace. Each time she looked behind, her own shadow moved independently, mocking, anticipating, ready to replace her. She stumbled into a library, walls lined with ancient texts. Candlelights illuminated dust and decay.
As she caught her breath, she noticed a book lying open on a table, pages yellowed and brittle. Drawn by a compulsion she could not explain, she read, "The flame reveals what you cannot hide. Your shadow is your witness. Beware the candle. It does not simply burn. It chooses."
A cold realization washed over her. The candle's shadow didn't just imitate life. It harvested it. Every shadow she had seen, the smiling stranger, the crying child, the monk who had once lived here, had been claimed, stored in the candle's eternal flame. Footsteps echoed behind her. She turned to see her shadow fully formed now, stepping off the floor, leaving the walls behind. It was her, but sharper, crueler. Its eyes glimmered with malicious intelligence. "Why are you here?" Mira demanded. Her voice cracked. The shadow tilted its head, the grin widening. "To understand yourself before we become one." Her heart raced. The candles around her flared, flames leaping higher, shadows leaping across the ceiling. Mira realized the only way to survive was to extinguish the candle, to break the bond. But the flame on the pedestal was impossibly high, untouched by wind, untouched by logic. Desperation made her act. She grabbed a fallen candlestick and hurled it at the flame. It struck, and for a heartbeat the fire dimmed. But then it reignited, stronger, brighter, and her shadow lunged. Mira felt herself pulled into the dark figure, her body convulsing as if the shadows themselves were reshaping her. And then, a silence. Mira opened her eyes in the central hall. The candle still burned. Its shadow danced lazily, mimicking a life she wasn't sure was hers. But she felt different, fragmented, aware of eyes in the darkness. Eyes that weren't her own. From somewhere far away, a voice whispered, "You are chosen." She turned, but the hall was empty.
Days passed, or was it hours? Mira could no longer tell. The monastery seemed unchanged, yet she knew it had changed her. Every reflection, every flicker of light carried a hint of her shadow, separate and watching. She tried to leave, but the door would not open. The candle burned eternally, a quiet witness in the cold stone hall, its shadow stretching, shifting, learning. At night, Mira would dream of herself, but the self in the dream always moved first, always smiled first, always whispered secrets she had never known. She had become part of the candle's design, and yet she remained, trapped between light and shadow, observer and observed. And the shadow waited, always patient, always hungry. Because in the monastery, no one leaves, not truly. And the candle waits for the next life.